All right, today we're jumping into something that honestly sounds like it's straight out of science fiction. How AI is completely changing medicine as we speak. We're going to cover everything from a bandage that literally thinks for itself, all the way to an AI that's inspired by the brain of a bee. Yeah, a bee. So, let's get right into it.
So let me start with a question for you. When you think of a bandage, what comes to mind? Probably something that just covers a wound, right? It's passive. But what if it could do more? What if it could be an active part of your recovery? I mean, what if it could actually heal you? And that idea, that concept of a thinking bandage, well, it brings us right into our first section here. We're talking about a whole new age of healing, one where recovery is getting faster, smarter, and way more proactive. This isn't just about tech helping doctors anymore. It's about tech actively working in real time to make us better.
So say hello to A-Heal. This is a smart bandage that a team of engineers at UC Santa Cruz came up with. And you really got to stop thinking of this as just a piece of gauze. It's more like having a tiny, flexible doctor living right on your skin, making decisions for you moment by moment.
So how does this thing actually work? Well, it's what's called a closed-loop system, which is pretty amazing. First, it's constantly imaging the wound, just taking pictures. Then its own little AI brain analyzes those pictures in real time to figure out exactly what stage of healing the wound is in. From there, it makes a decision. It might deliver a tiny, precise dose of medicine, or maybe a small electric field to help the tissue grow. And the whole time, it's beaming all of this data wirelessly to a clinician so they can monitor you from anywhere. It's totally adaptive, completely hands-off care. Okay, so the big question is, does it actually work? Well, the early results from preclinical models are pretty stunning, actually. The A-Heal bandage was able to speed up wound closure by about 25% compared to just standard care. Now, 25% might not sound like a crazy number, but when you're talking about chronic wounds, that is a massive leap forward, a total game changer.
All right, so that's what's happening on the outside of the body. But let's shift gears and talk about internal recovery. After a major surgery, the scariest part often isn't the operation itself. It's the recovery. It's the risk of some complication like an internal leak that nobody catches until it's become really, really critical.
And this really highlights a huge shift in how we approach this stuff. The old way is totally reactive, right? It's based on a nurse doing manual checks every few hours, or worse, waiting for the patient to say, "Hey, I don't feel so good." But the new way, it's proactive. It uses AI to constantly analyze data, flagging those tiny little warning signs way, way before a person would even feel that something is wrong.
And here's the tech that's making this proactive approach a reality. It's called Fluid AI's Origin System. And this is a big deal. It's the very first FDA-cleared platform to do this. What it does is, well, it analyzes the output from a patient's surgical drain. I know, not the most glamorous data source, but by tracking things like pH trends in that fluid, the AI can spot the molecular signs of a problem, hours, sometimes even days, earlier than we ever could before.
Okay, so we've seen AI that can actively heal, and AI that can monitor us after surgery. Now, let's pivot to diagnostics. This is all about giving doctors a kind of superhuman vision. It's about letting them see the invisible stuff, the things the human eye just can't catch on its own. Let's take cardiac care, for example. One of the biggest and scariest challenges is figuring out the dangerous plaque that can build up silently inside our arteries. And it's not enough to just know that it's there. Accurately mapping it, knowing what kind of plaque it is and its exact location, that is absolutely crucial for preventing a heart attack. And that is exactly where a new tool from HeartFlow comes into play. Their plaque analysis tool is a beast. Look at this number. It improves plaque detection by 21% over their last version, which was already really good. Trust me, in the world of cardiology, a 21% jump in accuracy like that, it's a huge deal. So how does it do it? Well, it gives doctors these tools that are just on another level. We're talking new 3D color-coded maps of the actual plaque inside your arteries. It shows them the plaque type and exactly how it's distributed. This means doctors can create way more personalized treatment plans. And maybe the best part, expanded insurance coverage means more and more people can actually get access to this. Okay, so that's an incredible tool for one person, for an individual patient. But what happens when you zoom out? What about public health on a massive scale? How can you take this kind of AI power and use it to efficiently screen millions of people for something like lung cancer, where we all know early detection is literally everything?
Well, to answer that, let's take a look at what Hong Kong is doing with their new health initiative. They are pouring a ton of money into this. They're expanding fee waivers for health services from about 400,000 residents all the way up to 2 million. The whole point is just to make preventative care something that a huge chunk of the population can actually access and afford.
And guess what's at the absolute core of this whole strategy? You got it, AI. They're using it to do a pre-judgment of lung scans, basically having an AI take a first pass to help out the radiologists. But it's not just that. They're also using it to slash the time it takes to get new drugs approved and out to patients, from about 10 months down to 5. It's this comprehensive tech-first push to lift up the entire public health system. So all of this brings us to our final section, where we're going to zoom out and look at the even bigger picture. We're going to move past just these specific tools and talk about how AI is changing how the experts themselves work. And maybe even more mind-blowing, how it's making us rethink how we build AI from the ground up. And I think this quote from the American College of Surgeons just hits the nail on the head. Focus on augmentation, not automation. That perfectly captures the whole philosophy. The point isn't to get rid of the surgeon, it's to augment them. It's about giving them superpowers, freeing them up to focus on the things that only a human can do. So what does that look like in the real world? Well, think about AI ambient assistants right there in the operating room. These aren't robots performing surgery. They're acting like super intelligent scribes, taking notes, handling all the documentation. And what that does is it reduces the surgeon's cognitive load. That's just a fancy way of saying it takes the mental burden of paperwork off their shoulders. So all of that brain power can go right back to focusing on the patient on the table.
But here's the thing. All this AI we've been talking about, it takes a ton of data and a massive amount of computing power. But what if we could make the AI itself way more efficient? Well, the answer just might be found in a really unlikely place, the brain of a bee. Researchers are digging into this concept called active vision, and here's the best way to think about it. A camera that's just sitting still, it gets blasted with a blur of information. But a bee moves. The very act of flying past a flower simplifies everything. It turns all that messy visual data into a clean, simple signal that its tiny little brain can process super easily. In other words, for the bee, movement is essential for perception. So this really shows us two totally different paths to creating AI. On one hand, you've got the brute force approach we mostly use now. It relies on these massive data sets and huge power-hungry computers. But on the other hand, you have this bee-inspired scan-to-perceive strategy. It's way more efficient. It needs less compute power, less energy, and it's even more robust. It could be the key to building powerful AI that can run on a tiny chip instead of a giant server farm. So, when you step back and look at it all, from a bandage that actively heals you, to an AI that helps a surgeon stay focused, all the way to a new kind of AI that thinks like a bee, the goal is actually the exact same. It's all about making smarter, more efficient tools that augment, that enhance our own human abilities. And that brings me to one last question for you. We've looked at some pretty incredible, very real innovations today. So, if you had a magic wand and you could choose just one of these to roll out for everybody tomorrow, which would it be? The smart bandage, the post-op sensor, the better heart scan, or the AI scribe that gives your doctor more time? I mean, they all tackle something absolutely critical. It really makes you think, doesn't it? What's the most important priority?